In this video we're going to look at shape and line and how it affects web design. So in this lesson you're going to learn more about shape and line, and you'll be able to apply it to creating a web page and think about what shapes and lines you need to use in your web page. Think about these questions as we go through this lesson. Does a square or rectangular shape have a particular meaning to you? How about a triangle? Think about the meaning of a circle. Now don't forget, you're going to be working on a paper, and it's going to be focusing on the topics that we discuss. So we just talked about color. Now we're going to look at shape and line. And so you have your web page. You can go back to your web page and look how that web page uses shape and how it uses line. In the next lessons we're going to look at texture and topography, and then you'll go back and you'll finish this paper up. Shape. Shape provides organization in a web page. It can hold concepts and ideas together, or it can divide a web page up into different sections. And also, shapes can give meaning. You have the circle of life that you've seen in science, and shapes can convey particular meanings for different people. Then you have closed figures, and you also have three-dimensional. You can have shapes look three-dimensional. We don't have any 3D monitors yet, and we don't have 3D web pages, but you can give a three-dimensional effect using shading and stuff like that. Alright, let's look at rectangles. Rectangles are one of the more commonly used shapes in web design. They help organize information, and they also help focus your attention on part of the web page. So let's look at this example. Alright, as you can see, they have a rectangle dividing the top. Okay, and if you scroll down a little bit, you can see how they're using these rectangles here to hold images. And again, we have a rectangular container here where it has a little banner going across the top. Let's look at some of their work. Again, we can see the use of rectangles. If we look at some of their sites, this would be a good site to look at. Notice how they use rectangles to divide up their page to contain as containers. They have this big rectangle here for their graphic header, and then they down here they have rectangles to contain these bottom links. See what the next one looks like. Again, this web design company uses a lot of rectangles basically to contain information. Circles also help focus the attention. They also can create a sense of harmony and unity, and they can also show a process. Let's look at how this site uses circles. So you can see in the background how they use circles, and then up here in this area right here you can see the circles that they are using to create their graphic. Then over here they're just using circles as graphics. So this site uses circles mainly for graphics and visual appeal. But you can see how they use rectangles for their navigation, and a rectangle here for their container for this part. Let's if we get more into their site. Oh, that took us to Flickr. So again, they keep the circular theme up here, and then they use rectangles to contain everything else. Circles are a lot harder to do. With code, it's a lot easier to have rectangles as containers. Buttons, talking about navigation buttons, can be represented by using different shapes. Many web pages use rectangular navigation buttons. Some may use circles, but both separate the button from the rest of the site. So when you're thinking about your navigation, if you look at a lot of different sites, they have them kept in maybe a rectangular type of container. So keep that in mind when you're making your navigation. lines. Lines, as we've seen in a couple of the sites, can be used similar as a shape. They help provide separation. You can separate your page into different parts. They also can provide organization. You can do it, it's hard, but you can also have curved lines. So let's look at these sites. Okay, the Morning News uses lines right here to separate the title, and then they have their hashtags here, and then they have another horizontal line. If we scroll down, you can see how they're using these thick lines, or you may call them a rectangle, to separate their page. Notice when you hover over, you have lines on top and below, helping the page separate these out from the rest of the page. Now if we look at this page, this is using a lot of different aspects we've already talked about. Notice these are all buttons, and when you roll over them they have rectangles. Now these lines they've used as to create that three-dimensional effect, drawing these cubes, and this is pretty cool. So you can see how they're using shape and lines to create texture, and we'll talk about that later. And you can just go through and look at this different websites this person's made. So these are some of the digital imaging and graphic designs that this company has made. Let's go check out this last website. Alright, now you can see the use of lines pretty heavily in this site. Notice they have this thick line here and this thick line here to separate this information from the rest of the page. If we scroll down, you'll see that they're using lines to keep their page separated into different areas. So you can look and see at different websites how lines are being used. Alright, lines can also create a progression or a process. They can show movement of an object through a system. They can also create motion or action. They can show a direction of an object or a cartoon figure. So you've seen, you have a cartoon figure. If you put lines behind him, it gives him the impression that he is moving. Lines can also form connection between parts of a site. And remember, lines are always typically used with hyperlinks when they're in a text. So remember, underlining information, we don't want to do it unless if you're going to make it a hyperlink. Alright, so go to your website and analyze how they use line and how they use shape, and you're going to write a paragraph on line and a different paragraph on shape. Maybe your site doesn't use shape, and you could write how it could be better used and how they could incorporate shapes. Maybe they use a lot of shapes. Most sites I've seen use some sort of rectangles in their design process, and then also write about lines. So think about the best uses of shape in web design, and also think about how lines can be used in your web page. So when you're creating your imaginary business, it's very easy to put a horizontal rule in your web page to divide up different sections of it.